Good day, learners. I'm Rudy Fabe, and I'm going to be your instructor for today. So, our topic for today is about the grammar translation method, assumptions, principles, criticism, and pedagogical implications. Now, what is the grammar translation method or GTM? GTM is a traditional language teaching approach that emphasizes the memorization of grammar rules and vocabulary through translation exercises. The method assumes that by memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary, students will be able to understand and produce accurate translations of text from the target language into their native language and vice versa. Well, this approach was commonly used for teaching classical language such as Latin and Greek, but has also been adapted for modern languages. According to Richard and to his partner, Longman Dictionary of Language Teaching in Applied Linguistics 2002, they define grammar translation method as a method of foreign or second language teaching which make use of translation and grammar study as the main teaching and learning activities. The grammar translation method is not new. It has different names, but it has been used by language teachers for many years. And at one time, it was called classical method because it was first used in the teaching of classical language, just like what I have mentioned earlier, languages like Latin and Greek. And in early 19th century, which saw the decline of Latin and its regulation to an academic language, the grammar translation method was adopted to help second language learners to read, study, and translate foreign languages and language literature. So the GTM, there are two key assumptions of this methodology. The first one is language learners must develop a good knowledge. Knowledge and learning and memorizing grammatical rules of the grammatical system for their first language and for their second languages. And they need to be able to develop the ability to translate text from first language to second language and vice versa. Well, ability to accurately translate text was associated with the ability to learn the grammatical system, of course, of the target language. The grammar translation method viewed study for a language as memorization of rules to be able to manipulate its morphological and synthetical system. Grammar is taught deductively by the presentation of rules, followed by translation practice, and accuracy in translating sentences and the text is the main focus of this methodology. Now, in the principles of GTM, the grammar translation method consists of numbers of main principles which represents the building blocks of this language teaching methodology. Teachers must assert their authority as their role is to transmit knowledge to learners, and the learner's native language is the medium of instruction. Very little teaching is done in the target language. It is an extremely teacher-centered method of teaching. All right? Learners need to be able to read the literature written in the target language and learn all the relevant vocabulary and the grammar from that literature with their target language. And learners do not play any active role, and there is little learner interaction. All right. The literary language is superior to the spoken languages. Learning a language consists of being able to read and translate a text into out of the target language. Now, the main focus of teaching is to develop the learner's ability to read, write, and translate, right? Teachers would not direct learners' attention to the content of the text, which is treated as translation exercise. Reading of very complex classical text begins early. To be able to communicate using the target language is not an important goal for learners. Also, this focus is on accuracy, not on fluency. All right? The grammar is taught systematically, following a sequencing grammar syllabus through explicit, extensive, and elaborated teaching of grammatical rules. The main assumption is that a second language is learned through deduction of grammatical properties of a target second language. When learners have developed a conscious and explicit representation of that language, they can apply this ability in the production of sentences through translation from one language to another. Also, errors are corrected. If learners answer a question incorrectly, the teacher would select somebody else to give the correct answer, or he or she or they replies directly to their learners. Also, learners should memorize vocabulary in the form of isolated word list. Vocabulary in the target language is learned through translation from native language. Now the criticism. In the grammar translation method, the main goal for instruction again is the ability to attain a high proficiency standard in translation and grammar accuracy. It does not require teachers to be native speakers. For example, you are teaching a English as their second language. You don't have to be a native to teach. Okay? Classes are not taught using the target language, and it does not require a lot of preparation. The ability to communicate using the target language is not the main goal for instruction. This methodology provides learners with the view that language is simply a collection of words which are isolated and independent. And it seems that for this methodology, there's no need for learners to master the four language skills, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The grammar translation method was questioned by researchers and language educators in the mid 19th century. Researchers of first language and second language acquisition believe that people learn languages by being exposed to the target language, the language that they hear, and by making connections between words and their meaning. Also, educators emphasize the importance of communication and the development of oral and comprehension skills. Because of the emphasis of the grammar translation method and the memorization of grammatical rules and translation, the lack of attention to the development of comprehension and speaking proficiency, this methodology was rejected. Teachers decided to direct their attention towards methodology such as direct method, that is according to Wong 2005, to foster listening and communication skills. And according to Richards and Rogers 2001, they describe the grammar translation method as tedious experience. When we say tedious, it means boring. A tedious experience of memorizing endless list of unusable grammar rules and vocabulary and attempting to produce perfect translation of stilted or literary prose. Also, they continue that it is a method for which there is no theory. There is no literature that offers a rationale or justification for it, or that attempts to relate it to issues in linguistics, psychology, or educational theory. But despite these shortcomings, there are still traces of the use of grammar translation method by language teachers today. Now let's talk about the pedagogical and implications. Based on the principles outlined in the previous section, a variety of techniques have been developed to help learners translate, practice, and memorize the new language. The main techniques are read and translate a literary passage. What does it mean? Learners are asked to translate a literary passage and then translate mainly a written translation, translate the target language into their native language. The passage provides the stimulus for learning vocabulary and grammar. The main focus is reading and writing at the expense of listening and speaking. Learners' native language is used for explanations, translations, and comparison between native language and the target language. The second one is reading comprehension questions. What does it mean? Learners answered questions in the target language based on the reading text and on the student's own experience related to the text. Now, number three, deductive grammar practice. What does it mean? Grammatical rules are presented by the teachers using paradigms and examples. Learners are asked to learn rules and apply them through translation exercises. Sentences are the main unit of the teaching session, and learners are asked to translate them into and out of the target language. Now, number four is fill in the blanks exercises. This one, learners are given sentences or passages with words missing. They are asked to fill in the blanks with the correct vocabulary or grammatical item. Number five, memorization practice. Learners are given a list of words with the native language equivalent, and they're asked to memorize them. The selection of vocabulary is based on the text used, and learners are taught through bilingual word lists. They're also asked to memorize grammatical rules and grammatical paradigms. But the priority is to become accurate and to attain very high standard in translation. Last but not the least, composition. Here is the teacher gives learners a topic and asks them to write composition on that topic in the target language. The topic is usually based on some aspects of reading text. So those are the pedagogical implications. Now here on the conclusion, takeaways and questions. What connection, if any, can you make between the Suggestopedia and your approach to teaching? Does it make sense to you that when your students are relaxed and comfortable, their learning will be facilitated? Should the teacher's role be one of the being respected and trusted authority? Or should direct and indirect suggestions be used? Should learning made as enjoyable as possible? Which, if any, of the other principles of this Suggestopedia do you accept? Do you think students can learn peripherally? Would it be useful for students to develop a new target language identity? Would you consider presenting new material with a musical accompaniment? Are any of the activities of activation phase of use to you? Well, that's all what the grammar translation method, assumptions, principles, and criticism and pedagogical implications. Thank you for listening.